Welcome to the GrowthPro Edge. We're here to help scale your business, build stronger teams, and sharpen your leadership skills. I'm Denise Killian, your host for the GrowthPro Edge, and today we're going to be talking about time management. I don't know about you, but I often have a laundry list of things that I need to get done in a given day, and sometimes don't make it a fourth of the way through. So I wanted to talk to the busiest person I know, Chris Moyer, who is an entrepreneur. He is an owner, part owner of an organization that is building Let's Roll bowling centers across the Midwest. He has a full-time job at Cubica AMF and also has real estate holdings, plus 2 teenage boys, a beautiful, fabulous wife, and they're expecting a 3rd child. So this is a man who has a lot of things happening at any given time. And quite frankly, he gets more done in about an hour than most people do in 3 weeks. So I wanted to pick his brain and talk about how he prioritizes his time to get everything done. So let's go ahead and dig in and find out how to sharpen your edge. Chris, welcome back to the GrowthPro Edge. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Love being here.
So Chris, I want to get started and talk about time management with you because you are one of the most busiest, craziest schedule person that I know in terms of all the things that you have your hands into. But before we get to that, let's tell everybody why I'm talking to you about time management. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do and all of the businesses that you're involved in.
Yeah, so I have a wife and 2 kids. Start there. I own 3 bowling center entertainment centers called Let's Roll. Looking at buying a few more. Also do some real estate stuff, manage real estate, and yeah, just been doing that now for a couple of years. And I have a
Oh, and also, yeah, there it is. And then also you have a W-2 job, right? So, oh, by the way, that's an addition to the job that your W-2 job is not just a go in at, 9 o'clock and leave at 5 o'clock. It involves travel. It involves a lot of things as well. And oh, by the way, the centers that you own are in multiple states.
Mhm.
And oh, by the way, the real estate portfolio that you have is not just in one town, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it spans as lengthy as our bowling center stuff. So, yeah, but the furthest one and furthest bowling centers are 8 hours from me as well.
Mhm. So, right, it's not like this is all in your backyard.
No.
You got a lot on your plate, dude. And full disclosure for folks out here, Chris and I have known each other for a little over 18 months, almost going on almost 2 years here in a little bit. And you have the capacity to think very quickly, make decisions, and keep it moving. Is that something that you have always had, or is that something that you have developed over time?
So being able to just make quick decisions, I think I've always had some form of that. I don't think I was ever one that just sat on something for a long time. So I think that I think I've had some form of that forever. In some capacity, whether it was business stuff, personal stuff, whatever it might be, is if it felt right, I kind of jumped in and then saw, just see how it works out and what happens.
So that is something that has always struck me as something that I admire and respect. I'm also someone who makes pretty quick decisions and keeps it moving. So I always love to when I see that in others, but your capacity to do it kind of puts me to shame. And also you're just real busy, right? You've got a family, you've got 2 teen boys, you've got businesses in multiple states, different kinds of businesses in multiple states. Oh, and your W-2 job. How do you keep all of that straight? Because in my knowledge, I've never really seen you neglect any of those sort of arenas. How do you keep it straight?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of different things. So, I'm a huge time blocking guy. So I time block on my calendar. Um, Everything from drive time. So if I have to drive 30 minutes somewhere, I not only block off the meeting that I'm going to or place I'm looking at or whatever I'm doing, I even block off the drive time. That way I know what I'm going to be doing at that time. So, I do time blocking, and how I have turned my time blocking in, or how I do it now really is every Monday morning, I kind of plan out my whole week. So I know, I don't plan out my whole week to every minute. I leave gaps in the middle of 30 minutes or hours to play catch up, and that's how you're supposed to kind of time block. Is if you time block every minute of every day, you just end up overwhelmed. So I leave spaces and gaps for the unknown. Um, but I kind of plan out my week before the week even starts on, I have goals and rocks that we work through our coaching stuff. I have goals and rocks of my personal stuff and what I want to accomplish. Some, other business goals and everything. And then I look at what I'm supposed to kind of get through this quarter and this year, and see if I have time to work on those things that week. Some weeks are better than others with travel. Some weeks I don't move a ton that week and just plan out to do one or two things if I'm traveling. If I'm at home that week, I can plan out to do a little bit more and get a little bit more done. Um, and I spend my first hour of every week really planning that week out, and then I hold to it. So, I don't let interruptions get in the way of the time blocking and what needs to get done that week. So if I'm in the middle of a meeting and somebody calls me, I don't interrupt that meeting or interrupt that space that I had blocked out for that. Like, my planning is from 8 to 9 on Mondays. If somebody calls me at 8:30, unless it was an emergency, um, or my wife. Those are really the only two reasons I'm picking up a phone at that time. Everything else goes on pause till 9 o'clock. Um, and the one thing that I think we've gotten used to in our culture is that we always have to pick up the phone or always reply to that text message and and everything's an emergency. And quite frankly, almost nothing's an emergency. Nothing that's going on in our day to day life is so important that we have to pick up the phone call in 12 seconds to get it done. It can usually wait a little bit, or it's usually nothing that's crazily important that you can't say, "Hey, I'll get right back to you," or just call the person back in 30 minutes. Because what's more important is sticking to your schedule, not breaking off of it, because um, there's a rule of 7 there that it takes you like 7 minutes to get back into the rhythm of what you were thinking about and doing. So if somebody calls you, you pick up, you spend 5 minutes on the phone, you really wasted 12 minutes of that hour or that half hour that you were working on it, because it takes your mind that time to kind of get back into it again. And then all of a sudden, if that was a 30-minute time block, you took a phone call for 5 minutes, your brain took another 7 minutes to get done. You just took 40% of your time in that half hour because you took a 5-minute phone call. And most people would be like, well, it's just 5 minutes. Well, it's not just 5 minutes, it's actually 12. Or if it's just 10 minutes, well, now it's actually 17. So when you think about it like that, it makes you like, well, I don't want to waste 12 minutes or 15 minutes out of my half hour that I went, blocked off to do that task. So, there's a lot there to unpack, but that's really how my methodology and my brain works to make sure I stay on track and don't fall off the wagon of everything I got going on, because I can't afford to, either, with all the businesses that I run.
No, absolutely, and that's the thing. The time blocking, you know, people talk about it, and, "Oh, yeah, I've got that on my schedule. I've blocked that time off on my schedule." We can do that till the cows come home, but if you don't stick to it, it is irrelevant. And and the chaos that it thus creates, right? If you know you have to get these 5 things done today, that these are must do, have to get them done today, and you keep putting it off, or you keep getting distracted, or allow yourself to be distracted, allow yourself to be pulled away, then the chaos that builds and creates take something that should take 10 minutes to do might now take 5 hours to do because of that sort of distraction and chaos, right?
Yeah, or weeks. I
Mhm.
mean, I've seen things that m should take an hour that take months to get done, and I know that sounds crazy, but it's because it never gets put on the calendar or the schedule or anywhere near the priority. So then everything, you always everything just becomes a higher priority than that task. Even though if that task wasn't important, then you should just delete it and not do it at all. Or maybe reevaluate if it is important. But if you never give it its own dedicated time, a lot of things just slip for weeks or for months, or even worse, years, of, hey, I want to lose weight. Well, if you never dedicate any time to it, you spend 5 years and you didn't lose any weight, or, that's just one example from a practical standpoint. But those things can easily happen in business where you go 3 years, you're like, man, I always meant to do that. And then you just never did it.
Well, I mean, I think any of us can look around our houses. Be like, "Oh, yeah, I meant to hang that picture," or "I meant to change out those pictures," or "I meant to" whatever that project may be, whether it's something as simple as hanging a picture or something more complex to, redoing your bathroom. If you talk about it but don't do it and don't set aside the time and dedicate yourself to do it, something simple can become 10 years later, or you never unpacked that box from when you moved in 20 years ago, and there it is, still there. What's in it? Who knows? Because you never unpacked it. Uh, right? That does build up. So, one of the things, speaking of unpacking, there's like 53 things that you said that I want to really kind of focus in on. One of them is the rule of seven. You mentioned it. I want to delve into it a little bit, explain it again so people really hear it because that one is a punch you in the face aha moment of this will just take a second. No, really, it's going to be a lot more than that, right? That rule is seven.
Yeah, it just comes down to, when you're focused on a task, whether it's, writing an email to working on a marketing task or working on financials or whatever you're working on, whether it takes 15 minutes, 30 minutes or 4-hour work session to work on that task. When you stop, not just to take a phone call, but to reply to an email, to text your friend or whatever it is, that distraction immediately turns your brain to something else, and then whether you like it or not, your brain doesn't just automatically turn back. It doesn't just, whatever you were focused on or the paragraph you're writing or the email you're writing, we'll think about it in a practical way. You don't ever just turn back and can start typing again. You end up rereading the email and you say to yourself, well, where was I at? Or you end up, looking at, say you were going through an Excel sheet and you end up like looking back at the last three formulas. Okay, this is what I was doing. Like there's that reset part. Like if you just practically think about typing an email out and then you just dead stop in the middle of a sentence, you can't just hang up the phone and restart. You have to like think what you were trying to say and reread and get back in this rhythm. And it's roughly 7 minutes to do that. And that 7 minutes down is on top of the time that you use to do whatever else you were doing. And that's where, think about it like this. If you had 10 distractions a day, you just lost an hour of your day, um, by those 10 distractions. Or even, it could be even less than that. It could be 5 distractions, could take an hour of your day. Well, if that happens 5 days a week and 5 distractions, that's an hour a week or 160 hours a year, which is an entire week you just lost because of replying to text messages, replying to emails, and giving everything else focus other than staying focused on what you're doing. And then when you look at it like that, that it's like 5 times a day that I replied to an email that could have waited till I had that space that I've already blocked out. You do that 5 times a day for every day of the year, or the 5 days a year, and you just lost a week of your life in distraction. And then it's like, holy cow, that's a lot of time that I just wasted that I could have done way more with. And that's time you don't get back.
And that one, yeah, I just needed you to say that again and really delve into that again because that does punch you in the face, right? That is a gut punch of a, oh my gosh. And when you look at the focus that it takes to be able to juggle, and listen, whether it's the 17,000 businesses that you're juggling and your family, and everything else, right? We all have things that we're juggling, whether or not it's the multiple businesses or not. And it's easy to get distracted. And especially in today's world, I think there is a very terrifying statistic that we used to have an attention span that would be several minutes long. And now we have an attention span that's like 8 seconds as a human being. So, our brains are so overstimulated from all of the mediums and all of the things that are placed in front of us, and we can't focus anymore for an extended period of time unless you really train yourself and force yourself to do, which I know you have done in such an incredible way. But the 7-minute thing, the rule of seven, that 30 seconds that you took to reply yes or to look away and reply on your screen to something that came up or glance at it, it's not just that 30 seconds, it's really taking a good 7 minutes away from what you're doing. That adds up. And if you think about how many times do we look at our phone during the course of the day, how many times do we let the whatever thing that's coming at you to distract you, that now sometimes it is a distraction that you need to pay attention to, right? But the number of times where that is that distraction versus you allow it to be the distraction is something that I think needs to be examined. And so going through this, you mentioned the word that I wanted to hit on as well, of priority. How do you prioritize when you're making your Monday morning schedule for the week? How do you prioritize when you have a lot of big things on your plate? How do you prioritize which gets what attention and when?
Yeah, so I'm gonna reference a book that I listened to a couple of years ago on audio, and it's called Eat That Frog. And for the listeners who don't know what that book is, he essentially teaches you to take the biggest, most important things and get those done first, even if they are painful. Which is eat that frog, so eat the frog first, versus everything else. And um, when you get those super important or super painful tasks that need done that maybe you don't want to do or that really suck that you don't want to do and you just get those done, there's such a relief after that, and all the other tasks just feel so much easier, versus doing all the easy tasks first and then trying to do the hardest one at the end is the worst way to look at that. So I structure my weeks really to where in the first 2 or 3 days of the week, I try to knock out my biggest things, right in the front of the week. And then by the end of the week, I'm knocking off the smaller tasks that are important still to the business, but not as important as those big meaty things that just really need to get done.
Mhm. Mhm. And, you and I have talked about "Eat the Frog" before, and it is such a great catchphrase that you can make sense of, and deciding what is the bad thing. And I don't wanna say bad, that's the wrong phrase. Deciding what is that big thing that needs to be done versus the 10,000 littler things that need to be done. Setting the priority of what is the big thing when you have a whole lot of options in front of you. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I kind of think back on what impacts the business positively if it's a business thing, so that's one. Also, I take a look at what other people are waiting on from me. So if I can get those things done sooner, then they can move on to do those things. So, there's going to be tasks and stuff that ownership has to do to be able to give it to somebody else and say, hey, this is the direction. Maybe it's a budget. Maybe it's like, hey, how much do I get to spend on this? Or, what are we doing for this day? Or, just something that needs my input or my work or whatever it is to do. Whether it impacts the business or somebody else is waiting on me, I try to get those things done first. And then if it's singular tasks that are just on me only, um, that are smaller, I throw those towards the end of the week. And then I even have some tasks that are like don't really need to even get done this week that are just fill-ins that I'll sometimes, if a meeting gets canceled or something happens, instead of re-jiving the whole calendar, of what I already have planned for the week and moving something from Thursday to Tuesday and Wednesday to Tuesday, I'll throw in one of those smaller tasks that maybe only take 15 or 20 minutes and just knock one of those off versus re-driving what my whole plan was for the week, because then that takes way more time than just inserting something small in a slot that may be opened up.
That's great. That's a good piece of advice. You are someone who moves at warp speed. I must tell you this and must tell our listeners that you move very quickly and you are able to process through things very quickly to make some of those determinations, which I think is an incredible trait that not every human being has. Is it something that you can did you learn how to do that? Or were you born with this?
I think a little bit of both. I definitely think there's a little bit that, I've just been born with the ability to, uh, I think I've been born with the ability to fail and be okay with failure. So that's one that I think you can learn it over time. I actually 100% know you can learn it over time. I do think, just like natural ability of baseball or basketball or anything, I definitely think I have a part of me that I just, I'm okay with that. So, that's part of it. I think, and then I think part of it I've learned over time that if I don't make quick decisions, the business fails worse than if I make the decision and it's not the right one. And that's a hard one to sometimes, kind of correlate in your mind. Well, like, what do you mean by that? And I think there's just practical things that we can all look in our business and say, I would have just been better off if I would have just done it than sat on it and not done it at all, and I think that's one that I had some failures at not moving at all and not letting that thing just happen and doing it and just passing it by that have taught me, just do it and make the decision and use a little bit of the brain power you have and a little bit of your experience that you have and come up with a basic answer to the question and and a path and you know modify it as you go down the road. I think my mentor actually says something that's really good, and he says that you could drive all the way across this you can drive all the way across the US in the dark by not seeing any more than 50 feet in front of you. And that's really impactful, is that you don't have to see the full path to be driving down the road. And when you think about it like that, is I think a lot of people want to see the full map, of where you're going from point A to point B. And you don't have to see the full map right away to make a decision. You can drive down the road and figure it out along the way.
You know the direction you're going,
Yeah. Yep.
but you don't need to know every place you're gonna stop to get gas and a Diet Coke, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, Chris, another question that I have for you, sir. You are very, very good at setting goals. You've mentioned that you set the goals for your businesses, plural. You set the goals for your personal life. You set the goals not only like the 1 year, 3 year, 6 year goals, but this next week goals that you dedicate an hour of every Monday morning to. One other thing that I want to talk about before we run out of time here is the importance of it's not just setting the big goal, but creating some milestones and establishing what does this completed look like, right? What is this goal once it's done? What does that look like? And creating that structure.
Yeah, I look at it as a lot of times it depends on what the goal is. I have a board to my left and a board to my right that goes over different goals and what it is. Some goals are quarterly that I can just knock them out this quarter. Some goals are yearly, and then the yearly goals turn into quarterly goals. So, just looking at my list over here, um, I have like some weight loss goals. I want to lose a little bit of weight this year. So, I have an end goal by the end of the year and then quarterly goals to get there. That way, I can see where I'm at throughout the year, for example. And so whether it's a quarterly goal, a yearly goal, a 10-year goal, I break them down into bite-sized pieces to be able to get from there and then kind of backtrack it a little bit. So if I have like a 2-year goal of doing something, then I say to myself, okay, like where do I have to be in 1 year to be able to get to that 2-year goal? Okay. So then I know where I need to be in 12 months from now. So where do I need to be in 6 and how do I get there? And then where do I need to be in 3 and how do I get there? And I just break that up into practical pieces that slowly get you from point A to point B, B to C, C to D, and just on, continued on down the road. No different than driving. You really only need to know where the next turn is. You don't need to know where the next 3 turns are. And I don't know what my plans are in October this year, but I do know what I need to get done the next 3 months, and I do know what my goal needs to be at the end of the year, but I don't know what the practical steps are for my goal in October, and that's okay. I don't need to know that yet. That will develop and work itself out as I get to August and September and start planning and where I'm at then and where I'll need to be.
Yeah, and, like, I think that is a lot of people do a great job of setting goals and for the year or for the quarter, but they don't really figure out what steps do they need to take to get to that goal and don't think about it until it's coming up to the end of the quarter or the end of the year, right? Like, if you wanted to lose 50 pounds this year and you didn't and you said that in January and you didn't think about it again until December 15th, you're in trouble. You're not gonna do that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also some practical small milestones along the way, because that's what those are. You brought up the word milestone, but that's what those things are. If you have a goal at the end of the year to get something, you have to have milestones along the way to help you get there, and that's what those are. So those 2-year, 5-year, 10-year goals, I'm working towards the 10-year goal, but I have no idea what I'm gonna be doing in 10 years, but I do know what I'm doing today is getting me along that path to eventually get to that 10-year goal, or that 5-year goal, or even that quarterly goal. Now the quarterly goals take more action because I need to hit that to be able to continue to move forward, but all the things that I wanna do by 2030, what I'm doing today is slowly building that path and building that road to get to 2030. And as you said, I think a lot of people do. I think everyone has great intentions at the beginning of the year or when they start a job or do anything or buy a business that, I want to do this within this time and I want to do that. And I think we've all walked in and anyone listening here who owns a business, they can look at their business today and say, man, I really wanted to do that, 3 years in and I'm 5 years in, I haven't done it yet. And and the reason why you haven't done it yet, there could be outside reasons like just money, financials, other stuff. But a lot of times it's just because I didn't plan on how to get there. And I knew I wanted to get there, but I had no map, no help, no direction, and no compass to figure out how to get there. And that's where the problem is. And that's where time blocking and goal setting and everything helps you build the road, towards what you want.
That's exactly right. So, Chris, as we end today, for those that are out there that are like, I know that I am a hot mess express when it comes to planning, that I can't manage my time. I reach the end of the day and none of the things I was supposed to get done got done because I was distracted by this and that and the other. When we talk about eat the frog, it's you got to start somewhere. You can't do it all at the same time, right?
Yep.
So, what is the one thing that someone can start doing today to help them get more aligned to being able to manage their time better? What is the one piece of advice you would give? Start with.
So, yeah, I'm gonna say do not let this thing distract you is what I'm gonna say. And it's because that thing can distract you so easily. Um, don't let that thing distract you from what you're doing right now. And what tasks you have to get done that day. Don't let a phone, an email, tweet, whatever it is, put the phone to a side, put the phone in another room even. Um, have a way for somebody to still contact you in an emergency. I'm not saying cut off the whole world by any means. That's why I said I still pick up the phone for my wife when she calls. Like that's still priority one, so I still, I will stop what I'm doing when my wife calls me because it's usually really important when she calls me. So, um, I'm not saying just stop everything, but reduce the distractions. And I think clarity starts, I think you'll have more clarity in life and more clarity of what you want to do when when this thing that we have that can distract us so easily is put to the side a little bit. I do it with my kids now. My wife and I have agreed, our kids don't get a ton of screen time anymore, and they're 15 and 14. That's not easy, but that thing is so distracting and um, so I wanna say kinda bad for your brain a little bit that, getting away from it and just focusing on what you're doing and being present, of what you're doing at that time is just super important. And that's just if that was just one thing that you can do different, I think you'd see massive gains in a week on clarity of your mind, on less distractions out there in the world, and probably a more positive outlook too on everything, when you take that distraction away and you're just focused on you, your family, your business, and what you're doing and what's in front of you.
Oh, that's a great piece of advice, right? Of focus, put this away, right? And be present. Be present in where you're at in that moment. So that's fantastic, Chris. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to have you here on the Growth Pro Edge. Appreciate all of the insight that you have, and my goodness, get back to work, right?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, we hope today's conversation has given you some practical tools to help you sharpen your edge and accelerate your growth. If you're ready to grow your team, your business, or yourself, contact us at thegrowthprogroup.com and set up a free growth call with one of our coaches. Once again, a special thanks to our sponsors, Embed, Party Center Software, A&A Global, Betson, Simnox, Schaefer, and Roller, for all that they do to help us bring you the Growth Pro Edge. And until next time, I'm Denise Killian with the Growth Pro Group. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for the extraordinary.